challenges for me mostly have been like stepping stones to where we are today. So I've learned to thank God for my challenges. First set of challenges I had when I started making shoes was finding the kind of materials that I needed to make the shoes. The leather was there. I mean, the first time I went into the market, I saw leather and I was like, wow, this is real leather. This is good. I remember a pair of slippers I had bought in England. I saw the exact leather. It was, I can't forget, it was red mock croc patent, leather. It was beautiful. I bought the slippers like £30 or so. I saw a whole sheet of exactly the same leather in the market. But then, remember I said I wanted to make shoes. I wanted to make shoes not just for men, but for women as well. Now, the thing about the market in those days was the Mushi market was run mostly by men. There were very few men and women in the business at the time. And so getting colors, beautiful colors of leather was difficult because the shoemakers in existence then were mostly making for men. So there wasn't a demand for, different colors of leather. So we started to use fabric. So if someone says, oh, you know what, I have a party and the colors of the day are teal and coral, we started to use satin because we found out that it would be difficult to get leather in those shades, Then heels, my goodness, heels. Heels were so the heels in the market at that time were so outdated. It was incredible, it was horrible, and I wanted to make really nice looking things. So it got to a point where we were going to Aba, we were carving wooden soles. We went to Aba, we carved wooden soles and we bring them back to Lagos and we were making really nice trendy, heels. Of course, getting shoemakers, again, that was a problem. But what I learned was that Rome was not built in a day. And so I learned over the years to recognize the raw material when I saw a shoemaker that I could work with, So one of the things I learned to do was to look for character first before skills. Because if someone had character, he would learn, I learned to look for innate talent, not skills, just talent, that you could then begin to groom, and then bring them up to your standards and things like that. I learned to look for pedigree in my shoemakers. So I learned that there were people who had learned from the very best, and the people that they taught always carried that DNA in their work, So I learned to look for pedigree. So if someone came to me and said, oh, I know how to make shoes, I'm like, who taught you? Where did you learn? Where have you worked? Who have you worked for? Because I know that it's putting all of those things together that brings you the final product. And then you can say, okay, this is where you are today. This is where I'm going. And you can take them along with you on the journey. So I learned that you can't expect it all to happen from the beginning, But because I'm also particular about the fact that we couldn't continue to be a country that consumes, I knew that we had to begin to build up people and build up little clusters of people doing different things, just so that the skills are spread, and that more people come into the industry and that the industry grows. Let's talk about business itself. So when I first started, I had friends, I had a mentor, for instance, a gentleman who had been making shoes much longer than I did, than I had. And he was my mentor. It was a very interesting relationship because he used to make shoes for Mona Matthews. And what I used to do was I used to take measurements and take the shoes, the orders to him to make. And then I would sit with him and then he would start talking to me, and all of that. And I mean, I didn't even realize that was what I was doing, that he was mentoring me, because it was not a formal relationship. But I know that I would go there to give him my orders, and then I would end up sitting and listening to him for an hour. And he also sort of knew too what was going on. It was, like I said, it wasn't formal, but we sort of both knew, you know. And then he would sit down with me and he would talk to me. And by the time I left, I would feel a lot better. You know, sometimes he would tell me exactly the same story he told me the last time, how when he first started making shoes, you couldn't tell the difference between the left foot and the right foot, you know, and stuff like that. But I always felt much better, you know, when I left him. And so I had a mentor. When I was in Faith Foundation, they gave me an official mentor. And she came to my house to see me. I will never forget that night. And she looked at my shoes and she was like, wow, your shoes are beautiful, you know. And she asked me about my pricing. And I told her my pricing. And she said, oh, that's good, you know. And she had stopped making shoes at that time because apparently she made some of the mistakes about, you know, pricing too low and not being able to sustain the business and all of that. But I didn't have any formal shoemaking training. So what I did was I learned from my shoemakers. I made them teach me, you know. So when they brought shoes, they would see another shoemaker's pair of shoes on the table, and they'll be like, oh, he made a mistake here. And they were always very quick to do that, you know. So I was lapping it all up, you know. So they would say to me, oh, he ought to have cut the shank like this. He ought to have done this before he did that, you know. And I would listen to them, and I learned from them. And then when the owner of the shoes they were talking about came back, I would say to him, this is the mistake you made. If you had done it like this, done it like this, done it like this, you know. And so sometimes when we have new shoemakers join our team, they'll come in like, what does she know about shoemaking, you know, and all of that. And then I'll say to them, you know what, if you do it like this, and you do it like this, and you do it like, it will work. And they're like, really? Looks like this babe knows what she's talking about, you know. That really helped me because there were no instructors, nobody really to sit down and say, do it like this. Also, when I started, I was already 39 years old. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to start learning how to make shoes from scratch. Nor was I disposed to doing that also, because I know myself, I am sort of like, I'm not a processed person. So let's use food for instance. When it comes to food, I can say to you, this is what I want to eat. And this is what I want it to taste like when it's done. And then I leave the rest to you. I'm not interested in how you mix the gari with the water and all of that. I just want to see the end results, you know. But I can guide you on, you know, the process of achieving the results. And that's what I applied to my business. And that's how, you know, it's worked for me. I've understood myself. I've learned my business. And I've learned to see what works for me and how I can make that work in my business. One of the challenges I had doing my business also, I remember when the game store came to Nigeria for the first time. The federal government had just cancelled importation of shoes. You know, they had banned importation of shoes. And one of the things Game Store did was to sell shoes. That's one of their major businesses, you know. And so they were looking for who could produce for them in Nigeria. And they came to me and I was like, okay, fine, you know. Now, I made some fundamental mistakes with that contract. The first mistake I realized that I made was I allowed them to choose shoes for Nigeria. And they were not Nigerians. And they didn't understand us in terms of what we wanted to wear, you know, on our feet. So I allowed them to make the choices. I should have spoken up. I should have told them that some of the things they were choosing wouldn't fly, which is exactly what happened. Secondly, yes, I studied law, but I didn't read the small print. I was just too excited to get the contract, you know. And the way the contract was structured, by the time they pulled out of it, I was left with a house full of shoes that nobody really wanted because, like I said, I didn't advise them as to what kind of shoes to make and all of that. But it's one of those things we learned. We gave out what we could give out. We sold some at very huge discounts, but as it is, we learn. And that also taught me that when you're making handmade shoes, mass is not your market. Mass is not your market. Your market is niche. Your market is quality. Your market, you may even say, is luxury, but it's quality. So you've got to understand that, and you've got to look for that market that suits what you're producing. So my typical client, for instance, would come in and buy 5, 6, 7 pairs of my shoes. Not just because they can afford it, but because they understand what we're doing, and what we're doing is what they want, and that has helped me a lot. So I even used to make school shoes. I made school shoes for Loyola Jesuit. I've made shoes for King's College, Lagos, and all of that. And I remember at the end of one particular contract, I sat down and I put pen to paper and I said to myself, okay, fine. The amount of money you got for the contract sounds good. But at the end of the day, how much profit did you actually make? So I sat down and I did the figures and I said to myself, okay, you know what? These are my men's slippers that I sell for X amount of money. How many of them do I need to make that amount of profit? Those things taught me where we need to focus and all of that. And it's also helped me to grow my business, because now I understand who I'm targeting. I understand where to channel my energies and my resources so that I can get the kind of results that I want. For me, milestones are about people, really, not events, so to speak. So a classmate of mine, her daughter was getting married, and she and her daughter and the groom all live in the US, and they ordered shoes from us, and the wedding was here in Nigeria. So they came from the US to have the wedding here, and they wore our shoes for the wedding. And that just trips me, because that tells me that my shoes can stand, with any kind of shoes from anywhere in the world. They can compete favorably, And then in addition to that, I have another client who lives in the UK. She's a size 39, but she orders her shoes from me, and she gets exactly what she wants. And then she sends me pictures and feedback saying, oh, you know what, your shoes are so comfortable. I love wearing them. And she sent me a picture of a particular pair that we made for her. She says, these are my most comfortable shoes, these are my best shoes. I love them, and all of that. Those are the things that excite me about what I'm doing, when my customers get exactly what they want, and then they give feedback. And then older customers, people who've been with us for years. I remember a client of ours, we made shoes for her when her son was getting married 10 years before then. And then she comes back, another child is getting married, and she comes back and she brings her shoes. And then, they're in such good condition. I had to ask her, did you wear these shoes? She said, yes, I wear them. I wore them for the wedding, and I wear them. But she's kept them, and they're so good. And she remembers that, and she's come back again to get more from us, So things like that really, really appeal to me. One of the things I've tried to do is to make my things different, This, for instance, anywhere in the world you wear the sneakers, people that know, they will know that this is Mona Matthews. Because we didn't copy anybody. This is ours. Do you understand? So you can get somebody else to try and make this, but you're not wearing a Mona Matthews. So people who are making things and finding that people are saying, oh, I know somebody else that is making, it's because they're making exactly the same thing. If what you're making is unique, if it's different and the quality is high, trust me, your customers will come to you. It's not everybody that's your customer. You have to understand that. There are people who want comfortable shoes. There are people who want value. There are people who don't want to buy shoes every 6 months. They don't even have the time. So they just want to add to what they have, not that they're replacing because the last pair has worn out or something like that. So the first thing is to get a niche for yourself. I remember when I first started, my first niche was big sizes, because that was my problem, and I knew a lot of people who had big feet found it difficult to get very nice things, you know. So the first thing is focus on what people want. As designers, as creatives, we usually always think about what you want to make, what you want to, you know. But when you are selling, you're not selling to yourself now, you're selling to other people. So you have to focus on what do people want, what do they need, what is it that they find difficult to get. And when you are able to produce that thing and produce the quality that people are demanding consistently, then people will begin to appreciate your price, you know. And you also have to be honest, you have to be straightforward. If you say it's leather, it better be leather. If it's not leather for any reason, then tell them it's not leather. It's not everything that is leather, it's not everything that we need to make with leather. But when we use something that's not leather, it's obvious that it's not leather. And I'm talking about fabric, essentially, you know. So tell the truth, create a niche for yourself, maintain your quality, and then trust God. You have your own niche, you have your own customers. They will find you, or place yourself in a way where you can be found.